Recording. Hello. So we've also set up the omnidirectional mic, so any questions you should be able to get picked up if anyone has a question. So now we'll go into demo, so I won't go back into the presentation. And this, again, is going to be very basic. First thing we're going to do is install VirtualBox, which, again, I'm doing a little bit of a food show here where I have a lot of things already downloaded, prepared to go through, but within 10 to 15 minutes, we should be through most of the demo because it really doesn't take that long to set up a lot of this stuff. So here we're just, and I'm just going to click on default settings for everything. You can, craft things the way you want, but default settings will get you going. And don't be afraid to go with default settings because you can go back and change a lot of these settings, particularly within virtual environments. So you feel like you didn't give it enough memory, you can give it a little bit more. You gave it too much, you can reduce it. You can change network settings. In fact, my Vuln Hub thing will bark an error, and I'll go change the network settings. We're not going to walk through each thing. We can, because we want to get you guys, if you guys want to start VMs and labs and stuff, we want to get you started with that so we can walk around and help you with that. Wow, I got too much stuff on here. The screen has, there it is.
Actually, I'll throw out one thing there. If you were watching the installation process, it asked him if he wanted to register the file types for VirtualBox. So VirtualBox will be automatically assigned like OVA, VMDK, all the various VM file types we talked about earlier. If you happen to be following our suggestion, like I said earlier, of having both installed, so you can use something like you're going to use VMware, but then you have VBox Manage and VirtualBox available if you need it. You might not want to check that option just to save a little bit of hassle, so VMware has control over those file types.
So this is VirtualBox. This is what the main interface looks like. You see I've got one up there. That's for the, if anyone's seen the Facebook CTF, you can download that from GitHub and spin it up and run it. And I use that for, so I use my home lab to spin that up and kind of poke through it to see if there's something I want to get into our environment. We won't run through that because there's really nothing there. But so going to create a new, we're going to load Samurai WTF. So pick a name, you can pick whatever you want. You pick the operating system it's on. In the case of Samurai, it's on Linux Ubuntu. And then I'll give it about 2 gigs of memory. Click on use an existing virtual hard disk. And click open. That's not right. That is right. Okay, so it didn't, dang it, I just removed it. So I practiced this last night, and usually I try to set it up, but apparently I didn't set it up all the way, or I didn't remove it all the way, so I have just hosed my demo.
So like earlier when we talked about converting VDI files to VMDK, that process is like what you would use if you have a VMDK file, and because that's just a hard disk. So you need to actually create the virtual machine that's going to use that hard disk. So if you were setting up one of those, you would go in and you would say, all right, I'm going to name this whatever, vulnerable VM that I want to play with, and you would select that option to use an existing virtual hard disk and select the converted hard disk.
Yep. So right here you can kind of see this is why. And I guess it doesn't matter because we have 4 hours of training, so I probably could have done this, but I had I only have a 5-minute talk in CircleCityCon, so I've set up a little bit. But you can see here I've downloaded, I had downloaded the zip file for Samurai WTF, the latest version, and then I just extract it. Once it's done extracting, we should be able to open it up in VirtualBox. While that's running, though, let me get my hotspot set up. Oh, and we had a correction. It's Derek, right? Yeah, he came to me and told me about VM Workstation. So there is like a free version. You don't have to just do a 30-day trial. You said sign up for like an ebook.
Yeah, you just have to give them your email.
You just have to give me an email. Yeah, or any email. Yeah, so give me your throwaway email so you don't get a bunch of spam.
Oh, we never have those.
Yeah. Yeah, so that takes a little bit of time, and I didn't want you to watch progress bar, so I was trying to expedite it a little bit. See if I can get this to join.
While that's loading, I have a good question. When setting up home labs, do you prefer
So yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Tim uses VirtualBox. I prefer VMware.
Well, and I would prefer.
Or you prefer free.
I would, yeah.
Is I guess maybe the better way to put it.
Because I don't get into VMs a whole lot. I do more of the I have like my own UAMP setup, stuff like that. So I am connected now. So we'll have to open up our talk again. What have I done? So this is overthewire.org, and you can run through. You can open up Bandit. So and you can see.
Go back for a second. We
Okay.
talked. We had a question earlier during the break, but just to point this out, when you go here, you can see down here they have some suggestions for how to work through these as they kind of go up in difficulty. Like we mentioned earlier, Bandit is very much like the level 1 version of NetWars. It's very like learn how to SSH into this thing and learn some Linux commands, and then it moves on to like Natus and Leviathan and Krypton, which Natus is awesome. If you didn't hear us talking about during the break, it's really fantastic. It's also kind of crazy. Like the first half of it is is like number 2. You hit about probably 10, 11, 12, and that might be pushing it for what you know currently. I personally, I hit level 15. I'm kind of stuck there. So it's there's like 30 levels of it, and I'm halfway through, and that's maybe like that one I have like 25 or so. But each one of these has levels, like Tim was gonna. So if you want to.
Yeah, we'll walk through the first bit here just to get people started. So you click and you just click on the next link usually. So there's the goal of this level is to log into the game using SSH. You see, they don't say anything, and I've already given you the answer, which is you want to use PuTTY. I'm sure there's other programs out there available, but even
or
down.
If you're on Linux or a MacBook, just use your terminal. And
Okay. Yep. You got helpful reading materials, commands you may need to know to solve this level, and they do that throughout the levels. So this is my PuTTY, and I'm going to just go ahead and load this because I have it saved. And because you're going to be logging in and out, you might want to you can save a login or pretty much like a host name there, and that's what it is: bandit.labs.overthewire.org. Hit open. I get a command prompt. I thought I had this bigger. Let me change this.
Pretty big.
I had because I don't. Just gonna get the size of the letters just a little bit bigger.
And basically, each one of these starts off the same. Some of them are web-based, like Natus, so you don't use SSH, at least for most of them. But for Bandit, and as well as many of the others like Krypton and Leviathan, these are all SSH-based. Yeah.
Just about whenever you're working through challenges like these that have walkthroughs, what's your general rule of thumb for like how long you're going to mess around with it versus how long you're going to see?
Sure. So we have a slide later where we had a question if we did the podcast on this, where we had a question, how do you make the time? And you may not have the time to play around with it for a lot if you're trying to learn something and you're just stuck. Personally, my rule of thumb is if I'm just doing it for fun and I was maybe going in with a certain idea of it and I get totally stuck, I might peek at the walkthrough to see what the next step is. Because sometimes you run into ones that some of these are made for CTFs, not these in particular, these, but if you're downloading something from Mullenhouse, it might have been for a CTF, and it was kind of meant for you to work as a team or spend 6 hours or 3 days at a con working on it. And I don't want to spend 3 full days of my weekend or something on that one, so I might peek at like, oh, I'm actually supposed to find this port or this thing was hidden, and then that might unlock it so that you go from being stuck to then you can figure out a bunch more, maybe even finish the thing. So I definitely use the walkthroughs because they're great for learning. And early on, especially with some of the early Natus levels when I was just getting started, I basically just followed walkthroughs. So depending on your skill level or how much you want to challenge yourself, it's a personal option, but definitely use them. They're out there, and some of them are very well written. And like I said, if you just scroll down a little bit and see what the next step, you might just see a command and go, oh, I don't even just close that tab. I totally forgot that command existed, or I know where this is going, and you're you're ready to go again.
So if you saw that pop up, it said request timed out. So they do time you out on these. So you want to try to log out, but they have something built in place so that there's not a bunch of sessions open on their server or left open on their server while people are trying to
Yeah,
walk
they
through
do want
this.
to clean up
Yeah.
because in some of these you'll be making files and
Yeah.
temp directories and crap.
Yep.
I'm
So
going to move that down a little bit.
yeah, and it took away my settings.
So with these SSH ones, as you saw earlier with the introduction and what Tim is doing, they start off, they'll be like, for Bandit, and most of them they follow this format. It's just Bandit 0 is the password.
Yeah, and then the next
Right.
level we'll find Bandit 1.
Yep, you'll get a flag, and
So,
that'll be the password for
Yeah,
Bandit 1.
and so I'm logged in now, so I go to the next level, and it wants me to open a file called README. And again, it'll give you the commands you may need to know to open a file.
And this one's very basic. It's,
Yeah, and,
you
yeah.
teach Linux if you don't.
Yeah.
If you're unfamiliar with it.
So ls does list what's in the directory. So there's the README file, and then I can use cat README, and there's my password for the next level. So you get the first password free, and then you go to the next, or you have to find it from here on out. So now I have to, and it tells me here I have to log in with Bandit 1. No, wrong one. Dang it. Spin it up. Load. So now we'll do Bandit 1. I will paste my password in there, and I'm in. And then I go to the next level, and now it wants me to open a file called dash, located in the home directory, which is not as simple as doing what the command I just did. But that, and I'm not going to go through each level here. We could be here for a while. But that's just to show you how easy it is to get started. You want to start using some Google to figuring out some of these challenges and progressing. So this is a very basic, very teaching you Linux commands. Let's go back to the VM because I believe that's working now. WTF. There it is. So now I've got, I'm just going to load the VMDK file here. Hit open, and you can see you can do, so if this, you can use a guided mode so it'll walk you through kind of like an installation to pick each one. But I'll just hit create here, and there's my VM. I've got my VM set up. And then all I have to do is start it up, and it will take a few minutes to start up. I imagine if I give it 4 gigs of memory instead of 2, it would start up a little bit quicker. But that is what allows me to go, and I know I'm moving around here a little bit, but we're gonna go ahead and open this view is just a little bit different.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to get back to my desktop, actually. Do this. Explorer. Desktop. So this is, I have UAMP set up here, and it'll spin up my web server that I'm going to use to load up the Bricks application. And so Bricks is just, and I'm going to line it up now just because it shouldn't, yeah, so the site cannot be reached. You can see I'm using my local host 8080 port /Bricks. Once UAMP actually gets fully started up, it takes a minute to get started up.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much like a web server now. It's got a bunch of login pages. It'll have different vulnerabilities that I can use to exploit just a login page. It's very, very simple here. I don't have a full, I don't have a very elaborate website, but it gets me what I need to do. It gives me login pages that I can play around in. I use this because I need to get better at Z-Attack proxy. Management came to me. I was working on the blue team where we had pretty much security across the board. So it was like a 3-man team. We had security for just about everything. Incident response, patch management. I was running the antivirus server, the web application firewall server. They came to me and wanted me to set up security into the SDLC, software development lifecycle, work with the developers to start getting security built into the applications that we were pushing out. And so, not knowing anything about application security, little Googling, found OWASP, and I found Zap, which is a dynamic scanner for applications. I needed to get better at using that, and I needed a place to do that on, so I downloaded Bricks. What's great about Bricks is that they have walkthroughs online showing you how to do the exploit of the vulnerability. What's great for that is with Zap, I can run Zap against it to see to try and find those vulnerabilities within the application. So that's particularly what I use that for. Now we can go back here, and you can see we've got Samurai set up. Yeah, this because I'm plugged into the. It's just got everything all messed up. Okay, you can see the bottom. So now we can, I got Zap on there. I've got Burp, if I'm interested in Burp. So one thing I should mention about Zap and Burp, if you're getting into application security, most pros will say that you need to know Burp. It's a tool that most people use. I grew up on Zap because it was free. It's a free version. So OWASP, everything is free. It's a nonprofit organization. Everything out there is open source and free to use. Burp has a free version. It's throttled. But if you pay $300 a year, and it's got like a subscription fee, you can get the full version.
Which is like the cheapest security tool you can buy.
Yeah, and that's not really bad. That's less than $30 a month. So it's not really bad in the long run. If you're getting into application security, you're going to know both. You're going to need to know both. And I'm actually, even though I've done a lot with Zap, I'm in the process of learning Burp. And I'll share that resource that I'm using for that. But there's some other little tools like Cool and Beef and all sorts of web application attack tools and stuff that you can use to test an application. And I'm actually going to go ahead and open up Firefox here to show you Foxy Proxy, because they've got Foxy Proxy built into Firefox here. So as you can see here, you can just download this framework, and you got a lot of the tools at your hand that you need. So you don't have to download a bunch of different stuff. And this is the Foxy Proxy right here. And all you do is you right click, and you can pick any one of, they've got everything set up from all their tools within the VM. So it's disabled Foxy Proxy, but if I want to use for Zap or Burp, I just click on that and go, and I'm able to switch back and forth depending on the tool I want to use. And you can see, like I said, it didn't take that long. Actually the extracting of the folder took longer to set up than actually getting the VM up and running. And from here we can, you can do a bunch of different, start playing with a bunch of different tools, things like that.
If you're unfamiliar with VMs, until today, one of the cool things that we should point out is that Tim just shut that down, but you don't have to shut down these machines.
You can suspend them, yeah.
Basically, every time I'm working on something, if I'm about to call it quits for the day, I just close the window like I would close my web browser. I click the red X in the corner, and VMware will automatically suspend, or I think VirtualBox will ask you, do you want to shut this down or do you want to suspend it? And it'll go into hibernation mode, just like closing your laptop. But even better is when you restart it, it starts off as if you walked away and it never changed. So I've even had...
I've done that accidentally. Yeah.
So even, I've even done it where if I'm working with one of these machines from VulnHub and I just want to call it quits for the night, I shut down both machines. I might have even an open interpreter shell or some kind of connection that I have with the vulnerable machine. It works so well that if I start up both machines at roughly the same time, the connection just gets restored, because they come back up with the same IP address. It's like they were never shut off. So it's really handy. You don't have to try to wrap up your work. You can have stuff open and everything and just say, okay, I need to shut off my laptop, or I need to go somewhere, and just suspend it, and you can come back later.
So I downloaded one of the files from VulnHub. So, and this is a little bit different than the and probably easier. And that what Chris was talking about earlier was you just double click, and what it's going to do is it's going to open up in VirtualBox and ask me if I want to import it.
Or maybe.
And I'm on 8 gigabytes memory. I'm kind of pushing the limits here, running a bunch of different stuff. So there's the import, and this will take a few minutes to fully complete. since I didn't show you. This is UAMP right here. It took me maybe an hour, 2 hours following the Bricks guide on how to set this up, and now all I have to do is hit start and stop. I don't have to play with anything else. Kind of got a little web server here, so if you want to learn about web server administration, this might be a good little starting point.
What was it called?
UWAMP,
It comes with bricks too, right?
I mean, you have to go download it.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. There's if you go to the Bricks website on OWASP, it's a really good walkthrough, and that's another good thing that we're going to make a point of is documentation. There's a lot of good documentation nowadays for anything. So it's just a matter of finding that documentation and spending a little bit of time reading it. I know we love reading through documentation, but
A buddy of mine was on a job, and he was doing his home live at home the night before, and he was practicing fuzzing. And so when he went up on site, he started his computer and plugs it in, starts it up, and everything wakes up because the computer went to sleep, and then the virtual machine went to sleep. And so he opens it up, and the fuzzer just starts.
oh no.
He fuzzed their entirety of their production
Oh no. Yeah.
by opening his laptop.
Jeez.
So, yeah, it's just, don't do that.
Yeah, you got to be careful about some of that stuff. So.
Yeah, it's so resilient. It's impressive.
So here I've got this will take another few minutes to start up. And this is where I was talking about where it changed network settings. I don't deal with Phone Hub, so this might not be the correct setup, but this is what gets it working for me.
I'll just point out too, in case you are curious and you're unfamiliar with some of the networking, is you do have an option, like I mentioned earlier. You can say share with my laptop.
I think that's on Mac. Yeah.
Well, it's what you're using now though. That's the NAT, where it's just going to act like your laptop's a router,
Right.
and it's just going to share the same IP address as your laptop. But you can also set it up to say, no, I want to bridge it, and it'll actually end up with it'll have its own IP address on your home network or whatever network you're on. So there are different options, and usually just using NAT's fine.
Yeah.
Or bridge is fine, doesn't matter. Either one will get you out to the internet if that's the goal, and so you can pull down updates or do whatever you need to do.
Yep. So this is the settings for each virtual machine. You can go through. You can change your storage. Or add it or whatever. So I mean, I don't really mess around in here too much. Default usually works for what I'm trying to get done in these.
Yeah, if you do need though, just as kind of an aside, if you're curious about adding things like your laptop has a webcam, you can add that webcam to a virtual machine and have it use it. So if you're curious just about, let's say you're curious about using Meterpreter and trying to take a snapshot with the webcam, you could do that, add a webcam to that VM and see what it does. You do hit a limit on how many devices can be added because it'll run out of slots. It just it's kind of pretends. You saw a cable connected for his network setting. They use some of that terminology almost like it's a real computer. It's like your network is connected, so you have a cable connected. The network is live. So it'll say you've run out of PCI slots, so you can't add a webcam. So you might have to remove things and add it, but typically you're good with just the 2 network cards or whatever you've added to it and really nothing else.
So, and this is the Phone Hub Seattle. And like Chris was talking about, there's nothing to log into. You just got a command prompt.
If you're lucky,
Oh, yeah.
some of them, like actually OWASP, the Broken Web App Project, and a couple others on Phone Hub, they go out of their way. They edit this and they make it custom where it pops up and says, "Hi, welcome to whatever it is you downloaded. My IP address right now is this," to make it a little bit easy for you to get started. But usually it's that.
This, and then now you got to
Maybe less. It might just be login and a blinky line. And that's all you get.
So, and that's pretty
and there
much.
you go. You can send shutdown signal, power off the machine, or save machine state.
Yeah.
So basically pause, shut this machine down like you would if you told it to shut down, or the power off state is just pull the plug.
Yep. So we'll send this signal shut down nicely.
Yep. Obviously sending the shutdown signal will take a little bit longer because it'll actually send that signal and it'll shut down and eventually close itself.
That's pretty much it. I mean, there are a ton. We could go through so many more, but those kind of are to show you that it doesn't take very long to get started with this, with building a home lab. And there's no really, default home lab that you have to set up that says you're doing a home lab. And there are other options. Some of these are stretching it a little bit as far as what a home lab is. Con CTFs are really great. I know I went to B-Sides Augusta last year, and one of the cool things they did is they allowed you to kind of rent a laptop, so you didn't have to bring one, and then kind of do single player type of stuff on it. So you weren't on a network with a bunch of other people, in a competitive environment. I mean, it was still competitive. There was still a leaderboard and everything, but it allowed you to kind of get your feet with that kind of stuff. And I've found that a lot of CTFs are new people friendly to doing CTFs.
And one of the things too is even if you're in a CTF or you see, you enter a CTF that is more advanced, or you're just totally stuck, or it might be geared more towards teams and you're just there on yourself or there with a buddy. A lot of the times they seem very intimidating because
They're
you
intense.
can't really ask questions because you're competing. So you ask the guy next to you, hey, did you figure this out? Probably just going to give you a dirty look and be like, you think I'm stupid? No, and turn the laptop screen away from you or go find a different seat. But afterwards, once the CTF closes, most of those people are going to be super friendly. Go up and talk to them at the hotel bar or whatever, and ask them, how far did you get? Or I saw you won, or I saw you came in third place. How did you get those points? And ask them. Kind of like the question about walkthroughs. Yeah, in many cases, a con CTF is the greatest barrier to when can you go find the walkthrough, because the walkthrough are the people next to you, and none of them want to talk to you until they've spent the next 12 hours working on that CTF. And once they get the red light, they can't do anymore, they can't score any more points. You can ask them, say, okay, I can't even work on this anymore. What was the answer? And you can learn a lot of interesting things.
Well, I know a few people that really are into CTFs, and I've sat with them for an hour just to watch what they do to kind of see what it's all about. So if you have friends doing it, don't be afraid to just say, hey, can I sit behind you while you're doing that?
You have a podcast with Movix, right, where you talk about CTFs.
Yeah. No.
Wasn't that?
No, that was
Who
Dave
was it?
Corsi.
Okay.
What's the podcast?
But I did talk to Movix about Red vs. Blue Team, and
Yeah.
So we got into
Exploring Information
CTFs.
Security.
Exploring Information Security
Yes.
Podcast. That's the podcast I do on iTunes, or that's available on iTunes. But I have a different security professional on each week. So, like I said, OWASP projects. Again, I'm an application security guy, so I apologize. I've done a lot of AppSec stuff, but there's tons and tons of projects on there for anyone looking to get better at application security. So also volunteering. I did Cyber Patriot this past year, where I became a mentor for middle school and high school students who are learning about information security. They do it more from the blue team side. So like as a mentor, you're not allowed to teach them any red teaming techniques at all. Mm-hmm. So it's all like configuring Windows settings and user management and things like that. One of the perks of that is that they give you a login to like a Microsoft store where you can
MSDN,
where you can get a bunch of free licenses and this would be perfect for a home lab if you want to do virtual environment. So I don't have to worry about
There's
finding.
actually one thing I forgot to mention earlier about snapshots. Another really great benefit to them is you can go set up. Say I'll plug your podcast again. You just talk to Movix. About the history of MS-08-067, which is
That's releasing tonight.
no,
It's not released yet.
They get a preview. So if, for example, you wanted to play around with that and see how it works and do that, well, you need to set up a Windows XP machine, and you need to make it purposely vulnerable by having it missing patches. But maybe you also want to have a Windows XP machine that is fully patched because you want to try something that only affects Service Pack 3 or whatever. You could have different versions. There was a time where I had, and I still have the backups of them, but they're not on my machine now because they take up so much space. But you could have, if you have the space and you don't care, you could have Windows XP, Windows XP Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2, Service Pack 3 snapshot, or different and same thing goes to any of the other operating systems. You can have different service packs, different this patch is installed, this time it isn't, and it's as easy as saying restore the snapshot. Nothing happens to the other snapshot, so you can jump between Service Pack 1 and Service Pack 3 and back again in minutes without having to go through the process of finding it, uninstalling it, and restarting the machine.
So you can have
all that.
different vulnerable
Yeah.
machines, different varieties. Yeah.
So if you did do something like this,
Yeah.
download all those ISOs and set up a bunch of machines, and you can have a field day.
Yes, sir.
Also, one of the things I've seen helpful for people is, especially if you don't know what to do on something and you're afraid and you don't want to like blow away your progress, take a snapshot.
Yep.
Because worst case is you delete it.
Right.
And then do what you do the exact thing you don't think you should do and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it too.
Yep.
That's one of the things that's helped me in actually seeing how things work.
Right.
Hit the big red button, see what detonates.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can recover very easily from it. Absolutely. Yeah. I've even used that. So, like I mentioned, I've been on a blue team, and snapshots. It is like, okay, I'm gonna go press this. I'm not sure what's gonna happen, so let me snapshot it first. I mean, we do it before every update and everything, but there are times where it's like, let's snapshot it, because then if we screw it up, we can just revert back to it. Snapshots are an amazing, amazing technology. Another thing, again, we're stretching the definition of a home lab is bug bounty programs. This will allow you to actually go after, organizations that have opted into the program. You have to stick within the scope.
These are too, just throw it out there. Sometimes there are temporary opportunities that come up that, even if you have no idea what you're doing, are awesome just to try out, like they had for 1 month Hack the Pentagon. You will never.
Well, that was an invite thing.
Right. You had to. Anyone could sign up. Is what I mean. Like, so you can, even if you don't think you know what you're doing, they were giving you a free pass basically to go have a field day on certain websites of theirs and with certain services, and that's a live environment. It's the DoD, which is just kind of cool, and it's so it's your free pass to go mess around in some of those cases where they say, okay, we're expecting you, come at us. And because we have people on call in case you break anything, and we're giving you permission to do it. And that's one of the very few times you'll have that. Even if you were a pen tester, they often will say, no, you can't break anything. It's one of the few times they're like, okay, here's your scope.
Break our shit.
Yeah.
Please try to break our stuff.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in the stuff, you can create a HackerOne account.
And there's a very low bar. You don't have to meet any certain requirement. You can just go in there and start looking around at some of the different organizations that are available for you to some of them you can download, some of them you can't throw a dynamic static analyzer at it like Burp or Zap. But some of them you can.
But one thing that's cool, especially if you have like Foxy Proxy, just install that. If you use Firefox for your everyday browsing, and just install Foxy Proxy, and if you run Burp in the background, you can, or Zap, you can be surprised what it finds with passive scanning.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with passive scanning. You're doing nothing. It's just looking at the requests that are going from your PC and what it's getting back. And sometimes you can find things like cross-site scripting. You might see potential SQL injection, things like that that'll get flagged going, hey, this parameter looks a little hinky. You might want to look at it. I know plenty of people that have, in some cases, made thousands of dollars off bug bounty programs, or at least a few hundred, because they just always run Burp in the background, and they're clicking through stuff, and they see Burp light up at the bottom, and they look at the alert, and they go, oh, there's SQL injection. There might be SQL injection here, and they do something to test, and they go, oh, okay, and they report it and get $500 or more for it. So it can be a lot of fun, and it gives you real, gives you an actual interaction with that company, and in many cases they're very open to it. Like, especially if they're part of HackerOne, they're expecting it, and they go like, oh, okay, no, and they'll talk to you about it. And sometimes it's false positive, or they don't think it's a security vulnerability, or it might not have impacts. And in many cases, they'll explain that to you, and you can have an actual conversation with them and learn something from that experience.
Do you think there's value in going to sites that you are well put together and seeing how that's done, so you can see best case scenarios?
Yeah.
And look at
I wouldn't poke it with anything.
No,
but
poke it.
No.
Look at the actual.
And like you said at the beginning, don't attack anything you don't own or don't have permission to. There's a big difference between, like, both Burp and Zap have an option to do live scanning, and you have to initiate it. There's like several steps. You're like,
you can do a safe mode too. They have a very safe mode.
But even then, that's
Yeah.
not something you really want to get into. But the passive scanning, like I said, it's just looking at what your machine is sending and what it's getting back,
But
and just like your browser's doing,
But
and that
like-
can find a lot.
But if someone getting into it, do you think that would be helpful so they can see like what's
Yes.
going on?
Yeah, I mean, seeing the difference between what a request that is, potentially has like cross-site scripting in it versus a request that does not is, it's absolutely.
So the final thing here is books. Books have been something that I've done a lot of, and these are 3 of the books that I've gone through. Data Driven Security by Jay Jacobs and Bob Rudis. Data is something that's becoming more and more prevalent, and having at least a basic understanding of metrics and how to interpret the information is going to be important, because it helps you make better decisions within security. If you want to be a data-driven, or if you want to be a data scientist, this is a great book to get started with. There are other options out there. But what's great about the book is that I didn't need a VM. I just had R, Python, and Gplot to pretty much go through the exercise. And that's all the book is. It's got like an introduction section, but then it walks through each chapter as different exercises based on different scenarios, typically within like a security operations center type of environment. Then there's also Applied Network Security Monitoring. I was a SOC analyst at one point, and so I bought that book to get a better understanding of my role as a SOC analyst and what I can do to improve in that role. That's by Chris Sanders and Jason Smoth. It's actually supposed to be Smith. That's an error I didn't see before. But that walks through setting up Security Onion, which is a VM. Security Onion, if you're getting in network security monitoring, is something that a lot of people use and pretty important to have a basic understanding of. You can also set it up in your home environment to look at your own traffic going in and out, which brings up a point of, you can use your home network as your own lab. Chris is a penetration tester, and I'll let him kind of talk about
I think
what.
we have is that on the next slide as well?
It might be. We can talk about it now.
Well, I mean, let's talk about wrap up with the Web Application
Forward.
Hackers Handbook.
And I talked about knowing Burp Suite, and that's the Web Application Hackers Handbook was co-authored by the creator of Burp Suite. And so they run through a bunch of different application security techniques, and it's all with Burp snapshots, Burp screenshots and stuff like that. So you can run through Burp at the same time that they're walking through different things and different types of vulnerabilities.
It is by far probably the most recommended book that I've heard from anyone that's involved with AppSec.
Yeah, it's about 800 pages long, so I'm still going through.
It is it's like the size of
I've made about through
Bible.
100. Yeah.
It is it's like that thick.
Pretty big.
If you've ever studied for like the CISP or the CC or anything like that, it's like that size of book. And but it is full of awesome information, not just about Burp, but I mean it gets into why attacks against an authorization page work, because here's how it's handled, here's the wrong way to handle it, here's the right way to handle it, here's maybe we're in between where you can steal, here's how stealing a session ID works and things like that. So it can be a bit dry at times, but it's full of really great information that you're interested in AppSec like Tim is. It's a fantastic resource.
And I've talked about all 3 of these books during an interview. So being shown that I've read these books and that I had some kind of home lab from the books really helped in the interview process.
Data-driven security is also really good for guidance, because it's what basically guidance is, having data and making a decision from it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and they run through that. It's pretty, and it's also with Gplot you do like visualization type stuff. So you put it into a format that you can interpret and make it easier to interpret and maybe present to like executives or management. So
and to add to this as well, I know if you are curious in more of the blue team side of things and some of these books, Tim has done a talk a couple of times called the Blue Team Starter Kit.
Yep.
That Adrian has recorded. You go to YouTube or go to Adrian's channel and search for Blue Team Starter Kit and you can find it. And then I actually, after Tim did that, I did get into talking about MySec and our CitySec group. For that group, I did the Red Team Starter Kit shortly after I got my OSCP. Because I had a few people that were interested in how I prepared for that and what my experience was before that. And in that I talk about a bunch of other books that I will mention now, but it's a pretty big list, so you might want to check that out. So you actually have a list.
And there are a ton of books out there with some really great stuff in them.
Playing off like the Hacker's Handbook, There's the Hacker's Playbook, which is kind of a cute book. It's written like a football playbook, but it actually works out really well, that format for how he walks through things. But he talks about how to use Burp in actual practical examples using his own website, the author's website. But he also talks about there's a lot of tools you can learn about in there that don't get a lot of love elsewhere. Like Spartan, which is kind of almost a wrapper for Nmap, and a couple of other tools like Nick2 and Derb and Hydra. You don't hear about those a lot. They're not big names like Nmap. And so he talks about those, and you can learn a lot about other little tools and how to use them, and start making a decision on what your favorite tools are, rather than just using what everyone else uses and with the defaults. There's also the Red Team Field Manual. So if you want to get into Red Team, but you're still getting used to the commands like we've talked about, you go through Bandit, you know some of the basic Linux commands, you understand Netcat and that sort of thing. It's not so much a book. It's about like that big. It's maybe like 50 pages, but it's a field manual. It's a reference guide. It is a huge list of various like netcat commands and TCP/IP commands and TCP down, like everything you might need to know, little flags and settings that you might forget otherwise and have to keep like looking up on Google are all in there. So that's a really fantastic book as well.
I want to check out professional penetration testing from Singress.
Okay.
It's actually about setting up a lab. So it's got
Awesome.
It's got a CD in it. It's got a lot of stuff that you can assemble in there. So it's got a lot of resources for that. And for like if you're totally trying to take off from a very basic level, there's another one from Singress. It's like this thick actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know, maybe 250 pages or something. It's called the Basics of Penetration Testing and Hacking. I think it's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That one's going on its second edition. It's like, it's written like a child's book, but it's super awesome because it's going to walk you through
Cool.
different stages, and that's
good
a super great
suggestions.
resource for a newbie.
What was the
Awesome.
first book?
I'm sorry?
What was that first book?
The first one is professional penetration testing.
Actually, in that same vein as well, and also going into its second version soon is I forget who else, so I'll ask their forgiveness later. But Dave Kennedy is one of the writers. The Metasploit, a penetration tester's guide, is a great introduction to Metasploit. Even the current book right now, I think it's like $30. That version 1, they are working on version 2 right now. They're writing it, so probably won't be out for a little while. But version 1 is still totally applicable. It's a little bit deprecated in some spots, but mostly it's just where it talks about MSF payload and MSF encode, which were two Metasploit tools for creating custom payloads. Those were deprecated and aren't used anymore. They're not even in Kali. They were combined into MSF Venom, but that's it. If you just know that, and as you're reading through the book, they refer to using MSF payload and piping that into MSF encode. Just know that that's all one command now, and that's everything else is pretty much unchanged and still applicable. So there's a lot of really great books out there for just about anything you want to get started in. Find that book, and like those were awesome options. Thank you. So that's you want to go with the Red Team. Those are good books. Dave Kennedy's book is good. Just getting started, and in many cases, they are enhanced by having a home lab because they can say like, well, sometimes they're using their own websites or websites they've set up to get screenshots that are also still live, and they invite you to like, oh yeah, try this out on this vulnerable website we set up so you can see and follow along with the book.
Yep, there's a lot of book options. We could be spending 2 hours
Yeah,
here. The next 2 hours talking about books. All right, so we've got everything set up. Now what? Well, you want to go through your exercises. You want to go through documentation. We talked about the OWASP Broken Web Application VM project. You need something that you can attack. Whether sometimes there's stuff online that you can go out. They've got intentionally vulnerable websites out there available for people to poke at.
Troy Hunt.
Troy Hunt's a big one for application security. There's Goat.js for JavaScript and Node. You got VulnHub. We've talked about, and then we talked about pfSense and OpenWRT, and Chris actually has
We have talked about it yet.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, and you're going to talk about it right now.
Yeah. So will be stretching a little bit further, but you don't have to use VMs to learn or to do labs. In some cases, you can actually just use your home or other opportunities that present themselves. So, for example, actually, funny enough, next door or like 2 doors down, they had the how to turn your router into an enterprise router, and taking on a project like that is a really good idea. You know, just even if you're just installing Tomato on your router, it opens up many, many more options. You can start learning more about networking that way and more about firmware, and that can just be a fun weekend project. And it might actually
you might have
greatly
an
improve
alternative
your-
one to. They might want to use like an old one or something first before, so you can get a handle on it.
But then PFSense, if you're unfamiliar with that, it's an awesome project. You should check it out. If you're interested in firewalls or more of the blue team side, PFSense is great to know. And it's also another great thing to know about for interviews and things like that. A lot of people use it. But the cool thing is if you have a home, then you probably have a home network, and maybe it's just a Wi-Fi access point and that's what you have. But you have an opportunity because maybe you own that house. You can wire it. You can run your own wiring. That's what I did one of the first projects I did was, at the time, I was a sysadmin and I managed a lot of contractors I sent to branches to run wiring. And I didn't really understand what they did or if there was any complications there or how that whole process worked. I just knew they ran cabling through the building and that was it. So I wired the whole house with Cat5e, and I learned how to do that. You pick up a lot of stuff because there's certain, max distances you can have for Cat5 and things like that, and you can run into different problems that are not necessarily always fun to solve, but you come away knowing a lot more about that than you did before. And when you do that, you also have total control over how your network is set up. So I set up a patch panel. I set up a whole networking station in my basement where everything terminates to. And I learned a lot in the process. And one of the more recent projects I took on was actually setting up, trying to segment my network and get a better handle on it by installing VLAN aware switches and setting up VLANs and segmenting my network. And part of that is setting up PFSense. It's a project that I have coming up, but I've ordered a PFSense box to set that up because not only can you set that up as a probably way better router than the router you bought from Best Buy, but you can also then start running things like Suricata and have your own IDS, run Snort, learn those tools that you hear about but don't think you have much of an opportunity to use. Just run them on your home network and see what's going on. Right. And you can learn a lot from there. Also awesome for interviews because you can say, run Snort at home.
There are some routers, I believe, that you can actually run PFSense on directly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you can. Actually, if you see him around, he goes by Lickety, but his name is Chris, the bearded fellow that who's granted you all Wi-Fi while you're here at the conference, as well as the networking for the CTF and everything else. Who runs the NOC for CircleCityCon actually and several other conferences. Is a big proponent for PFSense, and he's the guy that I hit up when I wanted to know more about what I should do. And just to tell you what he'll tell you is he would like you to see buying one of their boxes because they're expensive, but they come with a pretty awesome service plan. So they give you free service for a year. You can buy it for an extra $20. They give you 2 years, and they're a small team, but if you buy one of theirs, that you actually get to talk to an engineer. They don't have help desk people. You talk to one of their engineers that'll, in some cases, oh, that's a bug, we'll fix it, or they'll walk you through exactly how to fix it or what your problem might be, and all that extra money that you're paying over just downloading PFSense and installing it on your router or a spare PC at home goes to support the project and them. But yeah, absolutely. If you just want to try it out, you can install it on a VM and try it out in your home lab and route traffic from your VM through it and see what there is. Or set it up on a little desktop or something like that. You'll just need 2 network cards and a couple of requirements like that. But so stretching a little bit maybe for home lab is taking on it a little bit more than just a VM. But there's lots of opportunities out there to learn basically anything you want to know, and tying it all the way back to bringing that into an interview or back to your job. Can be super helpful and can help you get your foot in the door if you're trying to switch positions or move into a different field.
So that actually brings up perfect segue into our how do you find time. You don't have to do what he just said because that's a little crazy. I wanted to when they were building my house run cable, but after they did, I was just like, whatever. The simple answer here, and it feels like it's obvious, because we got this question after we did our first podcast, was how do you find the time for home lab? The answer simply is you got to make it a priority. So it has to be a priority, like anything. If you don't have time for this, it's really not that you don't actually have time, it's that you haven't made it a priority. With the home lab, you want to make it a priority, so you have to spend a little bit of time in there. Now, with that said, you don't have to spend 2 hours a night in a home lab. If you like that, if you want to do that, if you want to set up racks and stuff, that's great. But you can spend, I've spun up a home lab for a little bit, spent a few hours in it, and then I don't touch it for like 3 months. So I'll spin it up whenever I need to actually learn something new, or I feel like I need to do something. I'm not spending 2 hours a night on this. You can spend 30 minutes a week on it. Like, that will help you improve your skills. How much time you put into it will definitely help overall, but don't feel like you have to do this on a consistent basis, because you'll just burn yourself out. That's pretty much what it is. You just got to make it a priority, find time for it, spend maybe an hour, cut out an hour on the weekend for it, and do it. If you want to do it for an hour each night, that's great. That's really going to help you. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, not really. I mean, like we mentioned earlier that we had someone email Tim after we did a podcast episode kind of preparing for this talk and talking about building a home lab, and they asked this question, which is why we added it to the slides. So we do have an episode on it where we talk with them, and Tim summed it up pretty well. But yeah, that was, I do spend a lot of time working on the labs just because it is a priority for me. I have fun with it, and I enjoy that kind of stuff. So it's fun for me. But I talk to plenty of other people who will say that to me, like, I wish I could spend as much time in my lab as you. You're always talking about some new thing you did, and like, but if you aren't doing it, it's probably because you don't enjoy it, so you're not making it a priority. Even if it's just subconscious, you might not enjoy it. It's just gonna become homework. So don't burn yourself out, pushing yourself, making yourself do it when you think I need to fit this in. I need to do 2 hours this Saturday and work through this CTFDM. Wait until you actually have, I want to learn burp. I want to learn more about this, and then
that might be a good indicator that you want to learn something else. Yeah. So
because there's, like we've talked about so many different options. It might just be because that one thing isn't quite interesting to you, or it's something you do here and there, but it's not what you're really passionate about or what you really want to learn about. So wait until that time comes up, because I'm with Tim. There's periods where I'm constantly using my home lab, and then there's times where, like I talked about earlier, I hadn't used my Kali VM since November, because I was just busy and I didn't use it, and I had to install a bunch of updates I was missing, and that was because I just didn't have anything to do. And then I had something I really wanted to do, and I had to I spun it all back up again and was checking it out again.
Yeah,
so
this is an environment for you to learn, but if you're not, motivated or just not a priority, then...
Which is why it's great that it's not like a server rack taking up space
right.
in the home office, heating it like a furnace, is because you can suspend these machines and
again, there's nothing wrong if that's what you want to do, but
yeah.
No. So this is just a link slide of some of the stuff, not everything fit on there, but most of the stuff there. Episode 38 and 39 are the ones that we did with our home lab. I will mention that we did one other one with a listener who gave us good feedback and shared his personal home lab. So there's that released last Sunday. So that's pretty much there just for pictures and for people when they, like I said, I'll make these available online so you can go grab the links. Did you still need a picture? Good to go. All right. So that's pretty much us walking through the presentation. Are there any questions? Any other suggestions? We'll use the 4 hours if people want to stick around and get into building a lab for themselves. We'll help you do that. But otherwise, thanks for coming. Yeah. So if anyone wants to, we can walk through stuff up here, or we can do it at your computer, or.
Apologize if you want to live through this before, but let's say at the $600-800 price point, what's your favorite place to start for hardware for home use?
So I actually, we did talk about this a little bit. We didn't get into too much detail. Actually, to back up a little bit, CitySec groups are great because we talk a little bit about how you can meet people that you didn't know, that you start meeting sysadmins and different people doing different things, and from that I know plenty of people that are almost seemingly constantly trying to hawk old Cisco hardware or old servers that they're decommissioning, or they just know a person who knows a person that's, especially in Michigan, I know a lot of people that are in Detroit and Ann Arbor, and there's so many tech companies there that are, someone is always trying to, please take this crap that we don't need anymore. That's like a really nice Blade server, but they upgraded, so it's that's a really good option. Is just keeping an eye out for that. Is probably the best bet, especially for like $600 to $800 if you want to set up actual hardware.
School districts are.
Yeah, schools are
good
awesome.
Source of that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
they
I
get
mean,
a lot.
the concern I often run into, and I built a pretty decent home lab myself, and I don't know, maybe 16U worth of stuff, but my garage gets hot in the summer, so I don't actually want to run that
Yeah.
much rack space equipment. It's going to be, getting to 120 degrees at least. So it's interesting to see different approaches at that price point. Like things beyond Intel laptop works great, but if
Yeah.
you want more than 2 CPUs, what's next is
Right.
an open question.
Well, with this training, we focused on like kind of low cost laptop type stuff that that's
started.
great if you really want to get into that, but that's not something necessarily you have to do either. So yeah, if you have that kind of money, I mean, I'd say throw it into a laptop, a really beefy laptop that you can run a bunch of VMs on. So
Any other questions?
anything you guys want to run through again, or
Yeah, like we have, you're welcome to hop out and grab lunch or anything like that. I mean, we have this room until 2. I think actually until forever because then it's closing ceremony. So you're
We're
welcome
never
to hang
leaving.
out and set up your home lab. We'll be around if anyone has questions or needs help or anything occurs to you.
we can try playing around on my laptop
yeah,
if we
I
really
will
want
be-
to.
I will personally have to go to the airport by 4. I'm going to leave